You're sitting here, reading these words on a screen. Right now, you're one person out of 8 billion alive on this planet. An ordinary person, one of many. Nothing special, right? But here's a fact that changes everything. Astronomer Carl Sagan once pointed out that the number of possible combinations of your DNA is larger than the number of atoms in the entire visible universe. And there are roughly 10 to the 80th power atoms out there. Most people hear the word unique and think it's just a nice line for a motivational poster, a metaphor. But it's not a metaphor. It's verifiable math about your own body. So what actually happened the moment you were born instead of one of trillions of other versions of you? Let's break it down step by step. It all starts inside your parents' bodies, long before you were born. In the 1860s, a monk and scientist named Gregor Mendel showed that traits aren't blended together like paint. They're passed on as separate combinations, like cards shuffled before every new deal. Humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes. When a reproductive cell forms, chromosomes are shuffled randomly and independently. This process, known as independent assortment, results in over 8 million possible chromosomal combinations within a single reproductive cell. But that's only half the story. When an egg and a sperm cell meet, each one already carries one of over 8 million possible variants. The total number of combinations for a single pair of parents comes out to more than 70 trillion. And that's without counting one more mechanism. That mechanism is called crossing over. Chromosomes in a pair swap pieces of DNA before they even separate. Once you factor in this shuffling, the number of possible unique sex cells becomes practically uncountable. That's exactly why Carl Sagan's observation isn't poetic exaggeration. It's a working estimate. The real number of possible versions of you from the very same parents is comparable in scale to the number of atoms in the entire universe. And only one of those versions is sitting here reading these words right now. But there's one more layer here, and it might be the strangest part. You might think, fine, genes are a lottery, but at least the genetic code itself is copied from your parents, without a single mistake. It isn't. In 2012, geneticists at Decode in Iceland sequenced the genomes of 78 families and found that every person is born with an average of 63 new mutations in their DNA, changes that existed in neither parent. That means even a perfect copy of your parents' genetic combination still wouldn't be a copy of you. Part of your code was written by pure chance that happened exactly once. Now here's the interesting part. So here's an obvious question. What about identical twins? They share the exact same genetic code from birth. In 2002, a team led by Anil Jain at Michigan State University studied identical twins, fingerprints using automated recognition systems. The result? Their fingerprints were more similar than strangers, but the algorithms could still tell the twins apart. The reason isn't just genetics. While a fetus develops in the womb, random factors, amniotic fluid pressure, the speed of skin cell growth create a pattern that even an identical genome can't predict. This is where the real mystery begins. The same principle applies to your brain, just on a much bigger scale. In 2009, Brazilian neuroscientist Susana Herculano Huzel and her colleagues developed a new method for counting brain cells. Their study, published in the Journal of Comparative Neurology, found that the human brain has an average of 86 billion neurons, not 100 billion, as had been assumed for decades. That same year, the U.S. National Institutes of Health launched the Human Connectome Project, a massive effort to map the brain's connections. Researchers deliberately recruited twins to separate the contribution of genes from everything else. In 2017, researchers from Oxford and Washington University in St. Louis published a result in eLife. Using that project's data, they calculated that genes account for only about 15% of the variation in how people's brain connections work. That means even in identical twins with completely identical genes, 85% of how their brains are wired comes from something else, random electrical noise at the embryo stage, and every single moment of the life that only you have lived. Right now, as you listen to these words, something is happening in your brain that isn't happening in any other brain on the planet, including the brain of your hypothetical genetic twin. Imagine this. Even if you had an exact genetic twin raised in the same family, with the same upbringing, their brain would still be different, because 15% is all that identical genes can guarantee. It's not that you're rare because you happened to win the genetic lottery. It's that even winning that lottery only explains a small part of who you are. Everything else will never repeat, no matter the genes. Even if somewhere in another universe a person was born with your exact genome, within seconds of being born, their brain would already start to diverge from yours. Randomness starts working before conception even finishes. You're not one version that happened instead of another. You are the single result of a process that keeps making random decisions at the cellular level from the moment of conception to this exact second. 8 billion people are alive on Earth today. 8 billion results of the very same process. And you're here listening to these words, not because you're just one of many, but because you are the one result that could ever exist exactly like this. With these genes, these random mutations, and this pattern of connections inside your head, yours alone. There will never be another. Not ever.